American warplanes have been back in action again today in the skies over Iraq, hitting targets on the ground in Iraq, because while the world was watching Ukraine and Russia and Israel and Gaza, a violent group called ISIS has swept across Iraq. They have civilians and religious minorities on the run and threatened with death. And they're nearing the city of Erbil, where Americans are living and working. The president, who pledged to bring Americans home from Iraq, has been forced to send them back, at least into Iraqi airspace, in a two-pronged humanitarian and military mission. And we begin here on this Friday night with our Pentagon correspondent, Jim Miklaszewski.
Two U.S. Navy F-A-18 struck first, taking out ISIS artillery that had been firing at Kurdish forces at Erbil. Hours later, an unmanned Predator drone hit an ISIS mortar position not once, but twice, with Hellfire missiles, followed by 4 F-A-18s that obliterated an ISIS convoy with 8 500-pound laser-guided bombs. In his nationwide address Thursday night, President Obama said the airstrikes are necessary to protect American lives at the U.S. consulate in Erbil.
I've directed our military to take targeted strikes against ISIL terrorist convoys should they move toward the city.
The airstrikes are also aimed at supporting Kurdish Peshmerga fighters, U.S. allies overrun by ISIS rebels this week. President Obama cautioned, however, any U.S. airstrikes would be limited. Critics accuse the president of playing domestic politics and that limited airstrikes will do little to stop the relentless advance of ISIS rebels.
We're doing empty political gestures that won't have a significant humanitarian impact, won't prevent genocide.
But the president's committed to doing just that, with tens of thousands of Yazidi and religious refugees forced to flee the rebels and now trapped on a mountaintop dying of thirst and starvation. President Obama ordered the first of what may be many U.S. military airdrops of tons of food and thousands of gallons of water to the desperate refugees last night. Since January, ISIS, with only 15,000 forces, has seized a large section of east and northern Iraq with unspeakable brutality that includes mass executions and beheadings. They now control a wide swath of Iraq, Syria to the north, and recently launched attacks in Lebanon, with a real potential to threaten the United States.
I think ISIS is a threat to the U.S. homeland. There are Westerners fighting with ISIS today who can come back to Western Europe and the United States and attack.
President Obama vowed that he would not drag the U.S. back into a ground war in Iraq, but some military officials fear that the limited campaign he's now put on the table could commit the U.S. to a long-term commitment to an endless sectarian war. Brian?
Jim Miklaszewski starting us off again tonight from the Pentagon. Jim, thanks.